NRA TV with Grant Stinchfield.
Hi there, folks. Welcome to the program. Nikki Haley, the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, has resigned, and the president has accepted that resignation. This one is clearly tough for me and probably most conservatives. I've watched Nikki Haley call out the bias inside the United Nations time and time again. She took us out of the Human Rights Council. It was a great move, a council that includes Venezuela, China, and Cuba. That group had been highly critical of Israel and highly critical of U.S. gun laws, but the council repeatedly ignores atrocities in Iran and Venezuela. Here's Haley with President Trump this morning.
No, there's no personal reasons. I think that it's just very important for government officials to understand when it's time to step aside. And I have given everything I've got these last 8 years, and I do think that sometimes it's good to rotate in other people who can put that same energy and power into it. So there really is, a lot of people are going to want to say there's a lot of reasons why I'm leaving. The truth is, I want to make sure that this administration, the president, has the strongest person to fight. It was a blessing to go into the UN with body armor every day and defend America, and I'll always do that. I'll never truly step aside from fighting for our country.
No, she won't, and she did a tremendous job while she's there. She will finish out the year. She had said she is not going to run in 2020 against President Trump, and some had speculated the only reason that speculation came about was simply to cause the president and his administration some kind of harm or rift. They didn't buy into it. 2024, though, that is another story. What will happen then? Nikki Haley would clearly be a Republican frontrunner in 2024. Still, though, that is a long way off. School officials are taking the safety of their students into their own hands. They're training and arming themselves to make sure their classes are safe. Hudsonville, Illinois Superintendent Julie Klayman now carries to keep her school safe. Kramer's district serves around 320 kids and didn't have the budget to hire a full-time resource officer. So what did she do? She decided to become one, a cop. Listen.
Actually, our kids have been very supportive of it. They couldn't believe, when we were talking about it, but they have been very supportive of it and feel a lot more comfortable that we at least have something other than a stapler as a defense if, God forbid, something happens here.
So can you explain to me how you got to the decision where you needed to do this yourself?
Yes, we had been talking about it. We are a small rural community school district. The closest response would be at the best 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes coming from Robinson.
Clearly a good reason to have somebody with a firearm nearby if help is that far away. But I have always urged people in positions of power to realize because someone's 25 minutes away, that is clearly a detriment to safety for kids. But if someone is 30 seconds away, that could be a detriment to kids. Having somebody close to these children that are armed is the best way to keep them safe. It's why I'm a big proponent for increased training of teachers who volunteer to go through these programs, get the training they need to arm themselves. But this is a step, and the superintendent there said there are other faculty members inside her district that are going through this same program. This is beyond just a training program for teachers to keep their kids safe. This is actually going to the police academy and having them become police officers to act as school resource officers should the need arise. It is a tremendous program. I'm glad she went through it. Her kids are certainly safer for it. Antifa thugs have been notorious for their cowardly attacks around the country, but they seem to have found a home in Portland, Oregon, where the mayor allows them to wreak havoc in the streets while also telling police to stand down. In many of these videos, you can see police just watching as they terrorize drivers and people in the city there. Over the weekend, Antifa took control of some of the major streets in Portland, holding up traffic and attacking anyone who didn't follow their instructions. This is a thuggish group, and they are becoming more and more demanding and more violent as city officials continue to stand down. Things will only get worse. That is my belief. Joining me now is Larry Klayman, Chairman and General Counsel for Freedom Watch. Larry, welcome to the program. You've got a long history of keeping an eye on these Antifa characters.
Well, we do, Grant. We have a lawsuit which is going forward in Oakland, California. It deals with the city of Berkeley. It deals with Antifa. It deals with people in and around those groups. Because what we have right now, in effect, is a civil war in our streets. And the American people need to realize that. And as I've always said, that's why self-defense is so important. It's why being able to carry, either open carry or concealed carry, is important. Because these people really want to take us out. They want to destroy this country. And in conjunction with groups like Black Lives Matter, where we have lawsuits down there in Dallas over the massacre that occurred a few years ago, we need to fight back.
We sure do. And it's a shame because what they are doing is trying to get people to change their behavior through intimidation, through rioting, and simply their presence. Look, if I'm in Portland, Larry, I'm going to tell myself, my family, and my friends, I'm not going anywhere near these idiots. Now, that's a shame, though, because now they've gotten me to change my life simply because they're a bunch of hooligan lawbreakers. The police need to step in and do something.
Well, absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, the Pacific Northwest is very leftist. It's run by a lot of liberal politicians and others who are fomenting this, whether it's in San Francisco, Oakland, or Portland. And it's getting worse and worse. But it's spreading to the rest of the country. We've seen it in Baltimore. We've seen it in other cities throughout this country. And that's why I say that we need to put our foot down now. And I'm very fearful that if this continues, you're going to have people of other political persuasions take to the streets, and there'll be more massacres. And I'll tell you something, the left doesn't know what it's going to bite off continuing to do this, because the forces on the other side are much more powerful. I don't want to see that happen. Neither do you, neither does the NRA. But we hope that we can find judges in this country, it's very tough, that will put their foot down. If we can get in front of a jury, I'm convinced we can win. We have a case, a judge in our Antifa case who went to Berkeley. She recently dismissed Berkeley from the case. The case is going forward with Antifa. But these judges are so politicized, and they are products of President Obama, President Clinton, and others. And they are, in fact, aiding and abetting these violent anarchists that are in our streets that are being funded by people like George Soros, who we know all about.
Yeah. I think it's no coincidence that they choose cities like Portland and Seattle to wreak their havoc on the people there. You know, we had an Occupy movement down here in 2000, I guess it was 2011 in Dallas, an Occupy Wall Street movement. They didn't riot, they didn't wreck cars, they basically just ended up camping out in front of City Hall here. But I think it's not a change of ways. It's because the Dallas Police Department wouldn't tolerate it. You've got citizens in Texas who aren't going to tolerate it, and they ended up just camping. We're not seeing people just camping, though, in the Pacific Northwest and in other cities, including Washington, D.C. We're really seeing them wreak havoc and wreak violence on citizens. And the Democratic Party and the left has had a long history of that, Larry.
Well, they're essentially Bolsheviks. I hate to say that, but that's the approach these days. The ends justify the means. We saw all these crazy leftists trying to beat into the Supreme Court just yesterday, pounding on the door as if they're taking the siege to the Bastille. Unfortunately, the Bastille had a noble purpose. This does not. So, yes, we are faced with the prospect of a violent revolution. And, of course, it was Thomas Jefferson, who predicted that that was going to happen every other generation. And we need now to stand firm, to put our foot down, to defend ourselves. And I'll tell you something. We see the video of what happened in Portland with some guy being called, an old white man or whatever the case may be. It's spilled over in the use of race, in the use of sex, in the use of politics. And people need to be prepared to defend themselves. And, I hate to say that, but that's a reality. And that underscores the importance of the NRA and what you do and what I'm doing at Freedom Watch, is that we can't turn the other cheek here. We don't want to start it, but if they want to start it, we'll finish it.
Yeah, I would more urge us going down the road of stay away from these areas, let law enforcement handle it. One thing I love about conservatives is we don't have a history of causing problems like these guys do. Certainly, you've got to take precautions to protect yourselves as things go downhill. But these clowns really at this point aren't worth it. I do believe, though, you're probably right, they are going to escalate things. It's going to get more and more violent out there. And until law enforcement comes to the conclusion that they've got to step in and stop these guys, I think they're going to continue. We see it. We see what's going on in Chicago. We see what's going on in Portland. And unfortunately, they don't learn until law enforcement steps in and stops them. Larry, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you as always. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks.
All right. All right, folks, that's going to do it for this episode of Stinchfield. We're back here for our final episode of the day at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, which is coming up at the top of the next hour. Stick around. I'm Grant Stinchfield. Thanks for watching.
You're watching NRA TV with Grant Stinchfield.